So welcome everybody, and my name's Alan Levin, and this is the Crossing the Boundary series, where I have conversations with people who are doing really good, important work in the world, and we explore how they've gone through some changes in their own lives to get to the point that they are now, whether it's a change in their spiritual perspective, their political perspective, their worldview. And really I want one more little plug is if you would subscribe when you watch it, because that will help get the word out about these people and their work. So I'm really happy and honored today to be talking with John Seed. He's an Australian environmentalist and director of the Rainforest Information Centre. The Rainforest Information Centre campaigned to save the subtropical rainforests of New South Wales and really rainforests all over the world. He's a prominent figure in the deep ecology movement and a co-creator of the Council of All Beings and other re-earthing or deep ecology processes. His book, Thinking Like a Mountain, which was published in 1988, I highly recommend. You can get a free copy, downloaded online, a PDF version of it from his website. And I'll post that along with this YouTube and podcast conversation. I just want to read a short description of John that I found on an older issue of the Sun magazine. This is only part of what they said. He's been called the town crier of the global village. Whether fighting to shut down uranium mining in Australia, organizing grassroots efforts to halt the destruction of rainforests in New Guinea and Ecuador, or putting himself in the path of bulldozers, Seed is a tireless advocate for the planet. Part teacher, part roll up your sleeves activist, Seed travels through the United States and other parts of the world each year, leading environmental events. Not content to shout dire warnings about the fate of the planet, and perhaps aware that many of us wouldn't hear him anyway, Seed delivers his messages in musical, theatrical roadshows, as well as in community healing workshops known as Councils of All Beings. So John, if you would, just to start, give us a little of where you come from in the sense of what were the formative aspects of your childhood and with your parents, with your community, with maybe or with your ancestors that you feel influenced how you are in the world today?
Well, I was born in Budapest in 1945. Many years later, I realized that I was an embryo in my mother's womb at the time that she discovered that her mother and all of her relatives and my father's relatives had been murdered in Auschwitz. And so much of the confusion and unhappiness of my childhood and adolescence seems to make a lot of sense given the chemical milieu and the kind of world I think, I was epigenetically programmed to expect. And we were refugees washed up in Australia in 1951 and made a life there that my mother became a famous artist. My dad was a successful businessman, and I just had a Australian Jewish upbringing and education, and
Jewish
not sure
religious
what else
or
to say.
no? Well, just to tag on to that one, were they religiously Jewish, or would you say more secular, ethnically Jewish?
No, no, I'd say not religiously Jewish, but conflicted because they'd paid a huge price for
Mhm,
Jewishness and weren't sure exactly how to relate to it. My mum would light candles every Friday night, remembering her mother, and
mm,
I try to remember to do the same.
mm, mhm. Yeah. So you became a systems analyst for IBM, was it?
Yeah,
And
I moved to London. I got married when I was 21, and my wife was British. We moved back to London, and I ended up working with IBM in the financial district in London, working on the American Express account and wearing a three-piece suit to work every morning.
mhm. So my understanding is from hearing you talk about it and also from reading about you that in 1979 you decided to participate in a direct action protest in the rainforest, and it triggered a major change in your life. You said, I knew then that I was no longer acting on behalf of myself or my human ideas, but on behalf of the earth, on behalf of my larger self, that I was literally part of the rainforest defending herself. Can you describe, was that really a shift in your consciousness that happened at that direct action event? Or was it coming somehow from prior reading or engagements of some kind?
Yeah, no, it definitely came from that event. There's no question about it. It was unanticipated and completely overwhelming and bewildering. However, there's no question also that there was a lot of, in retrospect, it was clear that a lot of preparation had taken place, including um, LSD, which plucked me out of the kind of conventional life that I was living and set me in motion. And then years of Buddhist meditation and Buddhist retreats that I
Mm,
think, um, without which I'm sure things wouldn't have turned out the way that they did. But no, I had no interest in um, the conservation of nature, particularly. I loved the trees and all that, but no, I was very much on a quest for enlightenment, and
uh-huh,
some neighbours appealed for help to protect the rainforest at the end of their road, and I was into helping the neighbours, and I was curious, so I showed up on the day and was utterly swept away and undone, and you know pulled to pieces, and um, I had no idea what was happening to me. I was afraid that it was some kind of mental breakdown or something like that. I had no conceptual framework that would have allowed for, but my experience was that the forest was calling me, that it knew my name, and the experience was so warm and so intimate
mm.
that quite quickly I just surrendered and ran away with that circus.
So you had really gone through somewhat of a shift in consciousness prior to that through LSD, Buddhist meditation. You kind of had dropped out of the IBM three-piece suit world to that extent, but this kind of breakthrough into where the forest was actually speaking to you, that was a whole new thing. And
It was, and again, so much of it was only in retrospect, but in retrospect, it became clear to me that my sort of genetic material had swum in that rainforest for 95% of the last 100 million years. And that from that perspective, it shouldn't come as a complete surprise that, all kinds of connections remained. It became clear that the much vaunted human intelligence was just the tiniest fragment of the vast intelligence of the rainforest that had thrown out humans along with 10 million other species in exquisite, evolving synchrony. And finally, um, the particular forest where this took place turned out to have been one of the refugia where, over geological time, the rainforests in Australia and in the world, but the rainforest would advance and retreat depending upon climatic conditions. And whenever they retreated, this was one of the little strongholds where the rainforest had not vanished during tens of millions of years. And so it was particularly important that this area not be destroyed. And so perhaps that was why I and many of my colleagues found ourselves in this position of experiencing ourselves as being called.
Yeah. Did you become then very involved in activism with these other groups that had organized perhaps that one that you went to, and did that then become the major focus of your life right away, or was there a transition?
No, it was pretty well right away. I mean, like I guess it took me, right away. I mean, the transition had completely taken place within 12 months. I had there was no trace of my previous interests and activities and so on. And within 12 months, I had started the Rainforest Information Centre because although the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, had identified the rainforests as the world's #1 conservation priority, at that time there wasn't a single organisation in the world that had the rainforests as their agenda. And so the Rainforest Information Centre began sounding the alarm and trying to find alliances around the world to see what could be done about rainforests in other places as well as in Australia.
Mhm. I was looking at your book, Thinking Like a Mountain, and you begin the book with an invocation, which is kind of special in itself. And in it, you say, "We ask for the presence of the spirit of Gaia and pray that the breath of life continues to caress this planet home." Now, that's not only a very beautiful sentence, prayer, really, or invocation, um, but it involves maybe an evolution of the worldview, even that opened to you when you first, as you described it, entered into the rainforest connection. Um, can you describe the evolution of your thoughts and your your worldview? Um, what was that process like? I mean, you were an activist, but evidently your thinking about what it's all about evolved.
Yeah, I mean there were a series of steps, but the next step after just throwing myself wholeheartedly into the campaigns that were taking place in Australia, in
Mm.
New South Wales, the subtropical rainforests, then in Tasmania, the temperate rainforests, and then in far north Queensland, the tropical rainforests of Australia. In each case, um, non-violent direct actions led to the protection of vast areas of pristine rainforest in national parks that would eventually become part of the World Heritage List, and as much protection as anything can have in the world today. But um, as the 1980s proceeded, it became clear that for every forest that was being protected in the world, 1,000 forests were being destroyed, and that there was no way that we're going to save the planet one forest at a time. It's not like that these forests were something where if we could protect representative areas, the world would be okay. It'd be like thinking that you could keep a tree alive by keeping a few postage stamps of bark growing on the
Mm,
surface. Trees aren't like that, planets aren't like that, that we need vast areas of wild nature in good shape. We need huge areas of forest to be protected for ecosystem services, shall we say. And there was no way that this was happening, even if we multiplied the efforts of the conservation movement by orders of magnitude. This wasn't happening. And it just became clear that without addressing the underlying spiritual disease that
mm,
drives modern humans into imagining that we can profit from the destruction of what turns out to be our own life support systems. Paul Ehrlich said, we're sawing off the branch that we're sitting on. So
mm,
clearly a foolish move. And yet, for some reason, we seemed to be incapable of understanding what we were doing. We were just sleepwalking into oblivion.
mm,
And in trying to understand the drivers of this strange madness afflicting, you know, the sapient Homo, um, I came upon the philosophy of deep ecology. And for the first time, I felt like my questions were being answered.
mhm.
The term was
So who were
coined.
the primary writers or thinkers that you tapped into that helped you make that understanding?
Well, actually, it started with Robert Aitken Roshi, the Zen priest
Uh,
from the Big Island, um, who sent me um, his newsletter. There was an article that he had written called um, Gandhi, Dogen, and Deep Ecology. And that was the first time that I heard the words. And as I read it, I realized that he was himself bouncing off an article that he cited called Spinoza, Perennial Philosophy and Deep Ecology by the California philosopher George Sessions. So I wrote to Aitken Roshi and he sent me a copy of Sessions' paper. And as soon as I'd read it, I borrowed a card that gave me access to the stacks at Sydney University's library, hitchhiked 500 miles to Sydney and spent 2 weeks going through every footnote in George Sessions' paper. That was like as big a turning point for me as the experience in the rainforest had been, because all of a sudden it all made sense. So
mm,
according to Arnie Ness, the Norwegian professor of philosophy from Oslo University, who had coined the term deep ecology, um, underlying all of the symptoms of the environmental crisis, we find the illusion of separation between human beings and the rest of the natural world, the illusion of separation. So it might sound a bit mystical and certainly has very deep and mystical kind of echoes, but really
nothing
in
wrong
order
with
to
that
understand,
here.
sorry?
I say nothing wrong with that here.
No, no. In,
Yeah.
in, in order to understand exactly what he meant very, very quickly, all that you have to do is to hold your breath for 5 minutes while you consider the question of the human relationship with the universe, with the earth, and so on. And so that might bring a smile as a thought experiment, but I highly recommend it as an actual somatic experience, because what Ness called for were community therapies. Therapies. We have to heal something. Something is broken inside us, and he said that we're not going to be able to think our way out of the mess. He said that ecological ideas won't save us. What we need is ecological identity, ecological self. And in order to nourish that ecological identity, what we need is community therapies to heal our relationship with the earth. And so Thinking won't do it, and a thought experiment about holding your breath for 5 minutes won't do it. But if you really try as hard as you can possibly try to hold your breath for 5 minutes, then that actually does change things, so that anyway, I just perhaps it'd be a bit of an interruption to the podcast to ask your listeners to do that now, but I highly recommend it as a as an exercise in how to experience deep ecology, at some future occasion.
Uh-huh. I've never heard that at all. And wouldn't a person have to have some intentionality about that? I mean, just
Oh,
hold your
I
breath
see.
and
Yeah, no, the intentionality is to be thinking about. Basically, the problem is the illusion of separation. So
yeah.
that doesn't mean that we intellectually have an illusion of separation, because intellectually, probably most people listening to your program wouldn't have any such intellectual illusion. But ecological ideas won't save us. We need ecological identity. And how do we nourish our ecological identity? And so by contemplating the the possibility of any kind of separation between human beings and the rest of the natural world while holding one's breath. That is the intention, yes.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to try it.
Thank you.
I always appreciate when the ideas are brought down into the body and they're brought into an experience rather than an intellectual framework. Um, Something you also said in that invocation that I wanted to just call attention to and maybe have you reflect on is you said we call upon the spirit of evolution, the miraculous force that inspires rocks and dust to weave themselves into biology. You've stood by us for millions and billions of years. Do not forsake us now. So here you're speaking to something. You're speaking to the what you refer to as the spirit of evolution. And how would you describe that relationship? Like human being invoking or calling out to the spirit of, of evolution and all of what that means.
Well, first of all, I would say that it's poetry, you know.
Uh-huh.
So that doesn't mean that it's only poetry, but I would say that at least it's poetry,
Mhm.
and that um, if that awakens a certain sensibility in one as the poet or as the listener, that ha it doesn't need any further justification than that. So I'm not proposing that there is an you know a spirit of evolution in the sense of a god, like the old man with the white beard, reaching his hand out towards Adam, or anything like that. So I'm not so the personification is poetic, symbolic, and
Mhm.
so on.
Mhm.
And um, there is a great mystery.
Yeah,
Without a doubt, there is a great mystery. And
yeah.
as we accelerate our explorations of the great mystery, it recedes ahead of us faster and faster as our explorations, take us faster and faster in the direction of uncovering the great mystery. There's no sign that we're getting anywhere near, you know, the
Mhm.
plumbing the depths of it. And
Mhm.
so, so to me, um, I'm very influenced by the work of Thomas Berry and his colleagues, Sister Miriam Therese McGillis and Brian Swim. And I love a similar poetic comment that Brian Swim once made, where he said, the earth used to be nothing but lava, and now it sings opera.
mm,
So the point being that nothing was added to the lava. It's not that, God's finger came from the outside and touched the lava to turn it into
mm,
an opera singer. There's something in that lava where the echoes of the future, you know, are folded in there in some
mm.
kind of a way. So this is an intuition that one has. Uh,
Are you comfortable with the idea or really the possibility, or maybe have had experience of there being a kind of intelligence, consciousness, intelligence that's transcendent to the earth body that helps move it in the directions that it moves?
well, the thing is that I'm comfortable with the intelligence, in the sense that like, human beings are like one leaf on the great tree of life. There's tens of millions of other species all coexisting in dynamic, evolving equilibrium together, and the Earth is just one tiny speck circling one tiny planet, that one tiny sun,
Right.
and there's hundreds of billions of suns in one tiny galaxy. So the intelligence, it's just like, I can't imagine how there could just be intelligence in one little corner of this vast thing.
The
The
whole
thing itself.
cosmos itself could be intelligent.
Exactly. However,
Yeah.
I don't see any evidence that that intelligence is sentimental, in the sense of
Mm.
being a guiding hand that's moving us into some warm future place. That
Mm.
it's interesting. One of the I've been very influenced by Leonard Cohen, um, even more so since he died in some ways. And there's a line from Tower of Song where he says, "You'll be hearing from me long after I've gone." And I'm
Okay.
like nodding my head ruefully, saying, "No, that's true, Leonard. I am." But anyway, the song that I'm hearing a lot at the moment is one where he's tussling with the Hebrew God, and
Mm.
it, it I think the song is called "You Want It Darker," and
Yeah.
he says, "You want it darker, we kill the flame." And so this is he's talking about the paradox, and the paradox perhaps is the antilogism that God is good, God is almighty, all powerful, and evil exists, and there's something wrong with that. If any two of those are correct, the third one must be false. And so
Mm.
either we have to deny that evil exists, either we have to deny that Gaza, or we have to say God is either not powerful or God is not good. And so I think where Leonard is going is that God is not good in that song, because he says, um, you know he in this song he surrenders to God, and he says, "You want it darker, we kill the flame." So that basically we are doing God's will, because there's nothing else that we could possibly be doing. We are utterly helpless. We are utterly like straw being blown about in this great storm of a world. Nobody wanted to be the evil kind of despot. Nobody wanted to be the cruel concentration camp guard. Everybody just find themselves blown into whatever awful corner they find themselves in. And Leonard gracefully surrenders to God and says, "You want it darker, we kill the flame." So anyway, I'm not quite sure how we got there, but
Well, Leonard had a way of, in different songs and different poetry, expressing very different states of consciousness, you know. So, yeah, he could go into the dark for sure and embrace it. Um, but let's come back to you and some of your own work. Um, a big part of, I guess I would say, your workshops, your group rituals, group ceremonies, councils, um, involve processes that help people become more motivated, I think. You would agree with that. Um, find the strength and the courage inside, and even perhaps the guidance to know, what can I do? How can I help? How can I be part of um, making the world a better place, saving what we have left of the planet's ecosystem. Um, so people have to be motivated to even want to be motivated. Uh, and so there are stages of all of that that people go through usually before they even get to where they might want to attend one of one of your councils, I suppose. Um, Maybe you could just describe how it is you feel that the, the workshops that you do, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I know you're still doing them. Uh, how that motivates, how that touches people and moves them and motivates them and brings them to a place where they can do the work.
Well, the how of it, um, I guess, requires a bit of a backstory because I had the philosophy of deep ecology, but
Mm,
since 1982. But as Arnie Ness ruefully pointed out, the ideas are no use, that without ecological identity, the ideas won't take us anywhere.
mm,
And it was in 1985 when I met my teacher, my next teacher, Joanna Macy, that the next piece fell into place, because what she brought to the party was the spiritual technology, I guess, that would allow uh, the ecological ideas that Arnie Ness had introduced me to turn into the community therapies that he was calling for, and to become vehicles that would move us from ecological ideas to ecological identity. The, the platform of the deep ecology movement, which Arnie Ness constructed with the philosopher George Sessions, the last plank in the platform is, if you've understood the preceding propositions, then it leads to action. That if it doesn't lead to action, then you haven't understood, do you know? And so action is definitely the outcome of understanding these things correctly, but understanding them in a deeper way than merely through ideas. And so the way that what I learned from Joanna in I met her at a workshop when she came to Australia. I attended her workshop in 1985, and it was called Despair and Empowerment. And what she taught me was that we live in a culture of denial, that many of our most human feelings are never welcome in polite society. We are never encouraged to share our deepest anguish, rage, terror, despair. And we're taught that these feelings are dangerous and that if they get loose, we'll be crushed. And so we've become, all of us are adept at hiding these feelings, not only from each other, but from ourselves. And the problem with this is that these feelings are an important part of our intelligence, that they are the passion that allows the ideas to actually take root, allows the ideas to um, become actual, to
well,
to move
right.
things in the world. And so that I like to think about, 4,000 million years of ancestry on the earth. Every single one of my ancestors, without exception, has been intelligent enough to reach the age of reproducing itself before it was consumed, without exception. And that the vast majority of this time preceded cognition. That cognition is very beautiful, very recent kind of appearing on the scene. But what we call feelings, the feelings that we've denied, are what remains in us of this ancient intelligence that allowed our ancestors to unerringly make the correct decision, to know when to freeze and when to fight and when to flee and when to hide and when to just stay in the cave and when to come out and search for food. And decision after decision that needed to be made in a very dangerous world full of claws and teeth and hungry babies and the rest of it. And so that as we suppress those feelings, we suppress that intelligence. And in the absence of the passion that these feelings bring, the cognition is sterile, it's helpless. We know that something's wrong. We know that we need to do something, but we just feel paralyzed. We feel helpless. We feel hopeless. What can one person do anyway? The motivation is missing. So that what I learned from Joanna is that when we create a safe container, as we did in her workshop and as we do in every one of the workshops that I facilitate now, and honor our pain for the world. That's the name now of this work that I learned from Joanna, that a tremendous surge of empowerment,
What's the name now, did you say?
honoring our pain for the world. So uh, Joanna called it the spiral of the work that reconnects. And we start with gratitude, because it's only gratitude really that will give us the strength to be able to bear what is to follow, which is we create a safe container for these feelings.
So, so you begin by asking people or helping them get in touch with a feeling of gratitude.
Well, that's right. Just the fact that we've been able to find each other again like this, to be sitting in this circle again. But anyway, yes, we just go around the circle and everybody shares something about themselves and something that they're grateful for. And we start with gratitude, and the spiral ends on Sunday afternoon with gratitude again. And from gratitude, we move to honoring our pain for the world, which is the piece that Joanna brought to this, where we create a safe container that I let people know that although we've been warned that these feelings will destroy us if they get loose, if I were to fully experience the depth of the anguish that I must be feeling about what I know is happening to my world, surely I would be crushed. Maybe I'd commit suicide. Something terrible would happen. Wrong. No, I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times for 40 years now. Nothing terrible ever happens to anyone. They're only feelings. They're part of our humanity. They're safe. And in the process that we're about to do together, it's not necessary for everybody to step forward. The healing belongs to the entire circle merely by giving permission for these feelings to be expressed. Um, uh, it doesn't matter who expresses the feelings. As you'll see, everybody's feeling the same underneath as you are, because we're all living in the same world and we're all witnessing the same things happening. And so you can just relax and just hold the energy of the circle. And if it's your turn to step into the circle and to actually share your own version of these feelings, you'll know, and you can do so, but it's not necessary. Anyway, without exception, we hear things that it's like there's nothing else in our world that gives people permission to do this, that creates a space where for an hour and a half or 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it might turn out to be, it's just one agonizing tale after another about things some of the details may be new to us, but basically the outline of it is familiar to everybody. And the upshot of that is a tremendous surge of what Joanna calls empowerment, but that's a word, and the surge is actually a surge of an experience which is very, very powerful and um, transformative, you know. And so from honoring our pain for the world, the spiral of the work that reconnects moves then on Saturday afternoon into what Joanna called seeing with new and ancient eyes. And this includes the Council of All Beings and other deep ecology exercises where we take the empowerment that has been liberated, that, you know, it's, because these feelings are part of our intelligence, they're pushing up with a huge force of natural selection behind them. They're trying to make sure that we understand that there are dangerous things going on in the world, and that their job is to make us recognize and respond in some way to this. And when um, when that energy is liberated, and the energy that has been suppressing these feelings is liberated, there's a tremendous explosion of exuberance and upliftment, which isn't, it's not that we, it's not that we have a process in the workshop that creates that. That's just what happens when the feelings are honestly
Yeah.
invited and
Oh,
addressed.
yeah. As you know, I've attended a couple of these kinds of workshops with you, and can validate that what you're saying is true, that this is what happens. And I've even, with some of your guidance, I don't know if you remember, but you did send me some messages helping me guide other people in this area here, like where I live, through some of that process, and it was very, very powerful for them. Some of them, what we did years ago, people still talk about it and want to do more. Um, so the very idea of groups coming together for that purpose, to get into the reality of what they feel, and then out of that, perhaps feel like you do in the Council of All Beings, their connection not only with each other, but with uh, other beings other than the human beings on the planet. And I wonder, one of the words that's going around now, and that's, I think, speaks to some of this, is a shift from what's called anthropocentrism to bio or ecocentrism. I know it's a philosophical thing, and we want to get these things to be experienced, but the philosophy helps, as it did in your own life, to go to the places that we need to go. So say something about, because I think a lot of people that will be listening to this may not have heard that term, anthropocentrism and biocentrism, ecocentrism. What's that shift about?
Well, when Arnie Ness set the deep ecology movement going, in the 60s and 70s, he spoke about the illusion of separation, and his understanding of where this illusion of separation uh, emanates from. How is it that we suffer from an illusion of separation from what is, after all, just our own wide, larger self? That the reality is that we have no independent existence, that every breath that we take, every sip of water, every bite of food shows that we are utterly embedded in the more than human world. And he said that the illusion of separation is the result of anthropocentrism, that the idea that human beings are the center of everything stretches back at least as far as the Old Testament and the stories that man is the crown of creation, that man is made in God's image, and the rest of nature then becomes just like the scenery, within which the real drama, which is the human story, is taking place. And so this anthropocentrism, Ness said, is so deeply embedded in our culture. Every institution of our society is corrupted with it, that economics claims that value is something that's created by human beings. Nothing had any value until human beings came along. Value is that the world consists of humans on the one hand and resources for humans on the other hand, that nothing has intrinsic value except human beings, and that other things may have instrumental value if they are resources for us. This kind of an idea. So this anthropocentrism, Ness said, is what drives that illusion of separation, that because we see ourselves as being the spider in the middle of the web, we're unable to see that we are, in reality, according to both the wisdom of indigenous peoples and the science of ecology, more accurately, we are just one tiny strand in this vast, vast, mysterious web. And that as we destroy the other strands, as we destroy the other species, we're destroying our own future. And so, um, I mean, deep ecology is better expressed through poetry than more prosaic means. And one of the ancestors of the deep ecology movement is the great California poet Robinson Jeffers. And along with Leonard Cohen, I've been haunted by Jeffers a lot in recent months and years. And I'd love to share with you a poem that
Yeah, please.
Jeffers wrote. So this was written in 1924. So it's just 101 years from today that he
Before
wrote this.
anybody heard the words deep ecology.
Well, that's right. And
Yeah.
he was a famous poet back then, that he was on the cover of Time magazine. His nature poetry, uh, uh, everyone was swooning with the beauty of his descriptions of
Mhm.
nature, but he became disenchanted with what was happening to his beautiful nature and developed a philosophy which he called inhumanism, sort of sarcastically, I guess, and which he quickly fell out of favor. But anyway, this 1924 poem, in the end of it, he mentions boys, and the boys that he's referring to are his two twin sons, who were aged 8 when this poem was written. So we imagine with a rueful smile that he's saying this to these two 8-year-old boys. And so this is, to me, he was a great prophet, not only of the deep ecology movement and of the errors of anthropocentrism, but of much besides. This is called Shine, Perishing Republic.
Mm.
While this America settles in the mould of its vulgarity, heavily thickening to empire, and protest, just a bubble in the molten mass, pops and sighs out, and the mass hardens, I, sadly smiling, remember that the flower fades to make fruit, fruit rots to make earth, out of the mother, through the spring exultances, ripeness and decadence, and home to the mother. You, making haste, haste on decay. Not blameworthy, life is good, be it stubbornly long or suddenly immortal splendour. Meteors are not needed less than mountains. Shine, perishing republic. But for my children, I would have them keep their distance from the thickening centre. Corruption never has been compulsory. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. And boys, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man. A clever servant, insufferable master. There lies the trap that catches noblest spirits, that caught, they say, God when he walked on earth.
Mm.
Robinson Jeffers, highly recommended to anyone to look him up. There's lots
Certainly,
where that came
certainly
from.
relevant to us here in America today, and
I
maybe
think
all over the
so.
world. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I'll reference that poem and maybe the text when I pass along this conversation. Um, Let me ask you something that's a bit of a puzzle. Um, the shift in consciousness that involves waking up from the illusion of a separate self is a little different in many ways than just the empowerment to feel, to get through the emotional blocks and feel empowered to do something constructive and helpful in the world. Um, that shift, that primary, the first one I spoke about, is often thought to come from deep internal experiences, through deep meditation, through maybe a really healthy, guided psychedelic experience, or a vision quest, where a person goes deep within themselves and connects that way to the world and to the ecology. Um, so I know Gandhi is a big influence in your life. And of course, Gandhi talks about selfless service, but he also talks about meditation. He talks about going inside. Um, some people see those two things as divergent paths, going within and the service in the world and the connecting outwardly and activism and so forth. Um, I've I've made a major project in my life to not see them as divergent and to see how they can be integrated. What's your experience in your own life about that?
Well, a big question, Alan. And so many different directions that I could go with that. But the one that's coming to me is, again, maybe because we've just been talking about Jeffers, that there's an interesting line in Jeffers where he speaks of, he says, when will we learn to allow the diamond within to reach out and touch the diamond without,
Mm,
stretching our humanity thin between the invulnerable diamonds? So he is acknowledging both the diamond within and the diamond without, that some people want to reduce everything to one or the other, that
mm,
either it's all Maya out there, it's all an illusion, don't get lost in the illusion,
mm,
just work on your own inner enlightenment. And others are like, oh, it's just the opiate of the masses and the only reality is the world. And um, and Jeff is saying that not just that both are real, but both are diamonds. He's not giving more. You don't get the sense that one is more important than the other, but
yeah.
that somehow the more energy that you can put into the polarity of those two things, the more that one's humanity gets thinned in that process. You know,
Mm,
and by humanity I'm now taking to be ego or anthropocentrism or something like that. That the way
mm,
out is to simultaneously um, allow the tension between the exquisite beauty of the natural world, the incredible reality of a universe where lava learns to sing opera. Do you know that universe?
mm,
And at the same time, just the incredible reality that we find when we go deep exploring deep within our own soul.
Yeah. It's, I don't know if he had any influence from Buddhist thought, but it certainly feels very similar, that the idea of the Buddha within and the Buddha without, not being separate, and that each being, it doesn't have to be a human being, is Buddha within, or Christ, or whatever we want to.
One of the directions that my work has gone is, reclaiming my own sort of Buddhist heritage, Buddhist roots, and I've been working with Vipassana teachers and Zen Roshis and so on workshops which we call Buddha Touched the Earth, and that
Mm,
refers to a story of that there are many religious paintings and icons and statues that show the Buddha with his
right,
right hand touching the earth. And
right.
the story is that on the eve of his enlightenment, he was assailed one last time by Mara, the forces of ignorance, and Mara saying, "By whose authority do you claim this so-called enlightenment?" And the Buddha touched the earth, and the earth roared her assent that she claimed the Buddha as her own. The Buddha's enlightenment was the enlightenment of the earth, and so that there's no difference between personal spiritual enlightenment and protecting the earth and looking after the earth, something along those lines.
Mm. Yeah, I love that story. It's beautiful. Yeah, there's so much uh, richness in the traditions that have been handed down, the wisdom teachings that have been handed down to us, um, that can help us now. In two things I wanted to check in with you about before we close. I love talking with you, John. We want to keep it uh, enough to where the attention span of listeners can handle it. Um, but well, one is, I know, I just want to get to the fact that you are still quite active. You still offer the workshops, the um, pain of, what was the title of it then now, that I know it's not despair and empowerment anymore, but touching the
Yeah, well,
pain of the
just
earth.
the work that reconnects, or experiential deep ecology.
Yeah. So you still promote workshops and lead them and guide them and.
Well, as of this year, I've resolved not to fly to workshops anymore. I've stopped international flying 10 or 15 years ago, but now I'm no longer flying in Australia. And so I'm just doing workshops at my home, in person at my home at the Narara Eco Village near Sydney. But I'm organising more and more workshops with different colleagues that I've co-facilitated with over the years, where I'm zooming in half a dozen times over the course of the weekend while they are there, like in the flesh. And what this means is that I can begin to consider doing workshops again in the United States, which I haven't done for 15 years. And I'm in the process of having some conversations with colleagues in the United States about doing that again.
Count me in.
Oh, great!
We'll have a conversation about that
I will.
after this.
Well,
Um,
to be continued, Alan.
yeah. Are you still able to do any of the activist kind of work? I don't know that you're still chaining yourself to trees or anything like that, or
I
going.
am. I am, Alan. It's part of, you know, uh, call me a traditionalist. I don't know, but last year I chained myself to um, machinery to stop logging for a day in the Bulga forest, where the endangered greater glider and the koala and other endangered species were being threatened. And the year before that, I was arrested at the kayak blockade of the world's largest coal port, Newcastle, an hour and a half north of where I live, and I'll be there again in November this year. So I feel like that, whereas uh, there's no way that these kinds of actions are going to be enough to change, to turn things around. I also don't think that we can turn things around without them, and so it's part of um, you know, just the joy of my life that in my 80th year I'm still you know, healthy enough and exuberant enough to be able to participate in things like that.
That's wonderful. Yeah. You have said, and I also have kind of come to the understanding that the direct action events, whether it's chaining yourself to machinery or the trees and the forest that you want to protect, or rallies and vigils and so forth and demonstrations, are in a way rituals that are collectively embodying uh, maybe that spirit of evolution that you invoked in your book, um, in the beginning of your book, and that is it also your understanding that they may not only be affecting the people who participate in them and the people who hear about them through whether media or whatever, but that there's also something that affects the consciousness of the planet and that speaks back to that rainforest that spoke to you and the other life forms on the earth, and that these rituals actually have that kind of impact, however subtle in effect.
Well, you know, I don't
Getting
have
back to
any.
mysticism.
I don't have any. I don't know, special knowledge about these things, but certainly I feel like that it's not clear to me under what conditions it may be possible for um, consciousness to shift. And it's clear to me that without a fundamental revolution in consciousness, none of the other things that we're doing are going to be sufficient to save us at this time. That the sixth mass extinction is well underway. We are, laying to waste the Cenozoic era, which gave birth to us as a species, and that our only chance is a vast change in consciousness. And I've no idea whether there's anything that we can do to precipitate such a change in consciousness, but my own intuition is that the kind of things that I'm throwing my life towards is my attempt to answer that question. It's the best answer that I can come up with. And that doesn't mean that it's the right answer, and it may be that there are many different answers. It may be that there is no answer. You know, everything dies, every species dies, nothing lives forever. If it should turn out to be the case that we are the last generation to be here on this earth, uh, how does one live in that case? Do you know? And um, I think one, in all honesty, one has to, uh, you know, include that in one's, repertoire of things to contemplate. And my own answer is, on the one hand, it's not over till it's over. Every one of my ancestors has passed that flame from fin to paw and into my trembling hand. I'm not going to let go of it without every bit of struggle that I can manage. And at some point or other, it is going to be over. And I don't want to be so busy at that time. I just want to be able to say goodbye with tremendous gratitude, for tremendous gratitude. What an incredible 4,000 million years this has been. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm trying to sort of hold, not trying. I mean, I just find myself holding those two things, and somehow life is good.
Well, I'm going to leave it there, John. I can't think of any more beautiful set of words, thoughts, feelings that anyone could say. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you, Alan.
we will follow up.
Yeah.